Howdy, fellow farmers. Welcome back. Today I will be testing different household bulbs to see how well they perform. They are in different categories. These are LEDs, these are CFLs. We have 9.5 watt with dome, without a dome, 14 watt, without a dome, 9 watt CFL, 18 watt CFL. It was a struggle to find these bulbs. These two are also CFLs. They came with a glass dome covering it. Probably the last 3 bulbs I bought in the city. I visited like 10 stores, impossible to find. Everyone has agreed to stop selling them since they contain mercury, and that's obviously toxic and not good for anyone. Compared to LED, that doesn't contain any toxic materials. Alright, so we are going to compare 9 watt CFL to 9 watt LED, or 9.5, and 18 watt, doubling up from 9 to 18. This was an extra bulb that I never tested because 11 watt doesn't really play along with the other two. We are going to use, or I have used, since this is the result, I have used the Apogee MQ500 quantum sensor to measure the PPFD, which is the output of the bulbs. And this may seem confusing, but I will walk you through it. It's not that difficult. So what's interesting is 9 watt and 9.5 watt, 806 lumen, 405 lumen, CFL. What's the deal? While lumen is one indicator, it only tells us how much light the lamp shoots out, not where it ends up. That was my job to find out. All the black squares are the same size. This is my template. They are 1 by 1 feet, and they are supposed to be a reference for you to be able to grasp how far the intensity is stretching, etc. I have filmed the whole process of measuring each bulb, or I measured it beforehand and then I have filmed each of it to confirm the results with you. And I have hung as centered as I could a light in each example. I've found the strongest spot, made a small dot, and then measured out from there in 25 intensity increments. After that, I've made half moons, and then I have confirmed the results in front of camera. We are also going to test the performance of these 3 homemade reflectors. This is cardboard cover with aluminum, and I've been looking everywhere for reflector cups, but impossible to find, so I've made my own. These 2 bowls are from Ikea. They have a super high gloss inside and are most likely better used along with popcorn. But either way, we are going to find out. Let's get started. 9 watt CFL, 2 inches. This is difficult to do in an exact way, but this is as good as it gets at the moment. Very poor footprint, even at 2 inches, and the absolutely highest value $176. Trying the same bulb again, but I built a reflector the best I could, as I have seen it being used multiple times. And we are going to compare it to the same map as without the reflector for comparison. Center spot. The values are even lower now. 25. 28. Almost no difference. Not really. 100. Two inches. 9 watt CFL. Homemade reflector cup. The small one. Trying to have 2 inches, just above 5 centimeters. Same map as earlier. And I'm not sure how this happens. Let's do 50, 25. Yeah, I can't really say that I recommend using a cup, at least not this small. One last configuration, upgraded cup size. Still 9 watts. Same map again. .25 line. $50. It's a little boosted. 75. 100. 125. 150. And lastly, center spot. Strange. Same bulb, 6 inches. I was going to make a map for this. This is pretty much center. But for what reason? If 19 is the max, there's just no point. Double power. Double the fun, maybe. Is it losing intensity? I thought I had it. Well, apparently. Maxing out at 30. PPFD. 18 watts. No reflector, no nothing. 9.5 watt LED with cup, and I will be measuring from this edge, as this is where the light actually comes from. 6 inches. Ish. It's a bit off center. Focus. And center spot value 106. 9.5 watt again. LED, but with the top removed. Six inches. $25. 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, and center spot value 162. Last but not least, 14 watt LED, 6 inches, no dome. I've done it a bit different this time. I have the 25 mark done, but after that it's only in even hundreds, or it will be too many lines. 300. It's pretty high. And center spot value 336. All right. I recommend a reflector cup with this lamp. I do not. Can it be done? Absolutely. What is the result? An insane hotspot in the middle. go all the way. Okay, 1 PPFD, that's not a lot. 100 line, we're still at about 100, 200 line. It's difficult to say. 300. Oof. Alright, let's find out. Let's try raising it a little bit. No, maybe, no, yes. Oh, all right. Now we know. Was it fair to test the 9-watt CFL at 6 inches? Maybe not. But is it fair to test the 14-watt LED at 2 inches? You get my point. And a little makes a huge difference, as you can see. 4K is max apparently, which is like 2 suns. Wild. 140 watts of pure power. I just found this artifact in the attic when I was looking for other stuff. I'm not going to make a map. I'm not even going to draw a square. I'm just using the template to give you some kind of reference. We are still at 15 centimeters or 6 inches. It's bright, but not where it should be, at least not if you're growing plants. There's a dark spot right below. 140 watts. It's insane. It's increasing as we leave the dark spot. So it's built quite different from the other lamps, and most likely it's better performing when it's on its side, and it is. But still, one last test with 18, 11 and 9 watt working together to light up the world. This is highly improvised, but it's the best I can do for now. about 6 inches. The sensor is somewhat centered, and the value achieved is not very impressive. Water, 11, and the 9 water. Okay, maybe it's a little bit tilted. There you have it. Somewhat centered. $350. Back to the scoreboard. So we've tried a couple of different configurations, some different reflector setups. Again, I guess this shape is not meant to reflect light, and the hotspot created, I didn't make a map for this because I can't really recommend this, and if you have a different lamp it will give different values. If you have a different bowl, it will give different values. If you have it placed higher or lower, it will give different values. So I saw no point in making maps for you. Just for fun, really. So other than that, CFL, what can we say about this? Double the power was maybe double the fun, but it still wasn't impressive. Yes, this is at 6 inches, and yes, it could be lowered to 2 inches, but so could we do with this bulb, and this would still be outperforming the CFL. And yes, it could be placed sideways, but there was no practical way for me to do it, so I never did. Either way, I'm not testing these because I think they are good, as we can see. So, what do they have in common? Well, it's 2700 Kelvin, all of them. They are the same color temperature. They have E27 base socket, but that's about it. I did, because it is stated on the package, both the lumen and the wattage on all bulbs. I did write it down. 806 lumen divided by 9.5 equals 85 lumen per watt, which is the efficiency of the bulb. I'm not sure if it's with or without cup that it's calculated. Most likely it's what the diodes are theoretically putting out. So it should be even lower with the cup. Just a wild guess. 85 lumen per watt, same with this because it's same bulb. This has a higher number, 108 lumen per watt. Progressing on to the CFL. 45 lumen per watt. That's like half, almost half. This has a little higher, not sure why. Maybe with size comes efficiency. I am not sure. It's a common misconception that CFLs, T5s, T8s, etc. are a cooler lighting technology that produces less heat, and that's just straight out wrong, because the heat produced is directly tied to the wattage, as 1 watt will create 3.41 BTUs, and it doesn't matter what kind of bulb it is, it will create that amount of heat. What differs the different technology and bulbs from each other is how efficient they are at producing light and directing light. I think we can all agree on that we want a bulb that is as efficient as possible, as long lasting as possible, and has a low purchase price. So that's quite easy to understand, but what can we really do with these measurements and numbers? Well, to simplify it all and narrow it down, the plants we grow indoors will want an intensity of between 100 and 1000, roughly put. So small greens like spinach, microgreens and basil would do well in the lower end of this range, whereas tomatoes, peppers and marijuana will want the higher end. In some cases it can be a little lower or a little higher, but those exceptions are rarely a case when growing indoors with this light technology. There are plants that want a low intensity of light that have developed or become accustomed to a life on the floor of dense forests. Two very popular examples are the ZZ plant and the snake plant. These plants have low thresholds both when it comes to their minimum level of light preferred as well as their maximum level of light. As a simplified general rule, aiming for an intensity between 15 and 200 ppfd for shade-loving species like these two is ideal. On the other side of the intensity scale, we have this Ficus microcarpa. It loves a high intensity light and a long photo period, receiving a lot of light each day. It was placed in this window earlier, but the bottom leaves were slowly yellowing and falling off. 4 hours of full sunlight each day clearly wasn't enough, so right now I have him on life support below a bulb in the corner. We recently wrote an article about DLI, Daily Light Integral, and while it may seem complicating, it's actually quite easy. It's like driving a car, and where we take the speed, we multiply it with time, and we get distance. So for plants, it's the same, but with light, the rules are intensity in PPFD multiplied with the photo period, the number of hours, and this results in a value that is DLI. So basically there are a couple of recommendations at the bottom. Shade-loving plants will thrive when they get around 4 DLI, which is achieved at an intensity of 200 ppfd for around 5 to 6 hours. 4 DLI is also achieved with an intensity of 100 ppfd, but over 11 hours. Tomatoes, peppers and cucumbers are highlight crops that love both a high intensity and a high DLI. Between 20 and 30 DLI are good numbers to aim for with an intensity of 500 ppfd. 20 DLI is achieved at 11 hours and 30 DLI is achieved at 16 hours of photo period with an intensity of 500 ppfd. One quick search online told me that this Mycocalpa also wants 30 DLI and does really well at both high intensities and long photo periods. So trying to make a real world example of the information that we have this far, I've taken the 9.5 watt with dome off, and instead of 6 inches I've hung it at 4 inches roughly, which equals 10 centimeters. And in the outer edges we have 250, 300, 500 at the absolute top. And 500 we need a photo period of 17 hours, which would absolutely be doable, but these leaves at the bottom would maybe fall off. Upgrading from 9.5 watts to 14 watts. The bulb is a little bigger. It has a slightly bigger area and spread, which illuminates the plant a little bit more even. We are again at 10 centimeters, 4 inches, and this gives a lot better values. And the top PPFD. This is not super scientific, but it gives you an idea. 700. That's quite high. So this could possibly work as a real world example. This could possibly work at this intensity with this bulb at this distance for a photo period of 17 hours. If the plant were taller, obviously the intensity would be a lot lower further down in the plant, and if the plant were slightly bigger, again the outer edges, just as this leaf, would not get fully stimulated. 14 watt LED, 4 inches, did a decent job of illuminating at an intensity of 500 ppfd, somewhat evenly. Stepping up to 18 watt. Not going to run it at 6 inches, going to run it at what most people recommend online, which is around 5 centimeters or 2 inches. I have even centered it the best I could and angled it to really get down in there with its photons. All right. Outer edges, 100. 90 to 100. Wow, impressive. We have the absolute top This leaf is insanely close to the bulb. What does the tip get? This is like extremely close. Okay, the tip gets, depends, because it's swinging. But if we lower it just a little, like 1 inch, we're down at 150. So, CFLs. One last bulb. This one is made by Ikea and is designed for plants. What differs this bulb from the other ones that we have tested is that these diodes has nothing in front of them that focuses light, so it shines pretty wild in a 180-degree angle, while these are focusing lenses that will make higher intensity cones of light. So this time, even though this bulb is 10 watt, just as this, which is 9.5, it can be hung at 20 centimeters or 8 inches, but still producing an intensity that is quite good. This is at double the distance compared to the regular 9.5 watt. Because this lamp doesn't shoot out and spread light in all unnecessary directions. This is what differs a lamp made for growing compared to a lamp made for just general lighting, and that is why it's not fair to compare regular bulbs with grow bulbs. So this is for another video. Speaking of intensity, there are a couple of key factors that dictate whether or not you're wasting light. At low lighting levels, doubling your intensity of light will double the rate of photosynthesis. Say if you double from 130 to 260 ppfd. As light is the limiting factor for photosynthesis. But at higher intensity levels, say you were to double from 600 to 1200 ppfd, there will be less changes in growth, as light will no longer be the limiting factor for growth and flowering. CO2 levels or nutrient mix will also play in. Terms like NPQ, non-photochemical quenching, photoinhibition, and plant's light curve describes how photosynthesis happens based on light received. This is a rather large topic, so we won't get into it now, but the basics are: the further above 500 ppfd a plant receives, the less significant the photosynthesis boost will be. As sunlight is a free source, 1000 ppfd is a home run, but when you pay for every photon, as with LED lights, you might want to reconsider your options. I would like to take one last real-world practical example. Assuming I were to grow tomato and basil in this windowsill, which receives 4.5 hours of sunlight each day in the middle of the day, I know that the intensity of the sun where I live in the middle of summer is averaging at, say, 1500 ppfd. and that a window like this, as we found out in our previous video, a double glass window blocks 25 to 50% of the sun's intensity. This leaves us with an indoor intensity of 750 ppfd. And looking at our DLI chart in the blog, we can see that 4 hours of light, or 4.5 hours of light with 750 ppfd will result in 10 to 12 DLI, which is really good for small herbs and basil. But tomatoes, on the other hand, want much more light. 22 DLI is achieved after 8 hours, and 30 DLI is achieved after 11 hours, which are the recommendations for this crop. Half watt LED has a footprint and intensity and output that is not really doing the job. So taking to the 14 watt LED, and if we were to lower it just slightly from 6 inches to maybe 5.5, not sure, the intensity would increase inside and the intensity would decrease in the outer edges as the footprint gets smaller. So I'd say that we could possibly on average achieve approximately 200 ppfd average intensity for 1 square meter, which is a quite decent sized bush tomato, small variety, dwarf tomato plant. 200 ppfd for 14 hours equals 10 DLI. 10 DLI plus the natural 12 DLI equals 22 DLI, and we have met our threshold for a fruitful tomato plant. It may not be practical or economical to use this lighting technology to light up plants with super high light requirement. Possibly with this lamp, the 14 watt LED, for plants with this shape, with a small circumference canopy that is very flat. If it were a plant with a super high light requirement that had this shape, obviously it would be very difficult to illuminate all leaves evenly. Possibly for low light plants, I could recommend this bulb, the 10 watt, 150 ppfd, for a couple of hours every day would be a good idea. It would be more practical to satisfy these two with a bulb like this in a basement with no windows and no natural sunlight. But these bulbs are best used as a supplement or super early stage when a seedling is very small and has a very low light requirement. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you learned a thing or two. In our next video I will compare this T5 fixture, which I recently bought for $20, and bulbs for $5. I am curious to see how 28 watts of T5 compares to 3 times 9.5 equals 28.5, so roughly the same wattage, different lighting technology. I was sure this had I assumed this had a reflector inside it when I bought it. I didn't open it in the store, obviously it didn't, but I've seen many of you use it and we need to find out how it performs. I'm also going to test the Ikea bulb, make some PPFD maps and footprints. I've seen this being used worldwide, and hopefully I will find a way to fairly compare this lighting technology to our Z2 LED grow light running at 50 watts. Hopefully I'll find a way, because this is well crafted for growing plants. This is not. So obviously there's going to be a difference, and we're going to find out how big of a difference.